Welcome to the 9th episode of the Monthly Dirtcast. I'm Jared Dillian, editor and publisher of the Daily Dirt Nap, a financial newsletter for investment professionals. So a lot of times, podcasts have authors on to talk about their books. We have an author on today, and of course you should buy his book, but that's not why we're having him on. We're having him on to talk about the business of publishing books. Most people don't know a lot about the publishing world. They hear that so-and-so celebrity got a 7-figure advance, but they don't really know what that means. And I think very few people have a handle on what has happened to the economics of book selling since Amazon entered the scene. My guest today is Turney Duff, New York Times bestselling author of The Buy Side. He's going to talk about what it is like to be an author, literally. And I'm going to chime in too because I am also an author, but Turney is about 3 or 4 times more successful than me. Turney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and you're a liar.
So
about the success.
We've known each other for quite a while, going back to our Wall Street days.
It might be 10 years. 2007, 2008.
Yeah, maybe 6, maybe 11 years. Yeah.
Right.
So I used to execute your ETF trades, and back in the madness back then. So the buy side, as I mentioned in the intro, is it's a massively successful book, and we'll talk about why. But a lot of people, I think that number one, that the buy side was just an overnight success, that it happened spontaneously, and two, that authors are all super rich and super famous. So let's talk about those misconceptions. Well, first let's go back and talk about the beginning. How you got to write The Buy Side. Start from the beginning.
Sure. So I was returning from my second drug and alcohol rehab stint, and I knew I did not want to go back to Wall Street, or could not, or should not, and I was really just trying to figure out my life. And writing is something that has always sort of called to me, and I just literally started writing every day. I was working with a woman who was like a creative life coach, and she challenged me, just to write for 30 minutes. 5 days in a week, and the next time we would meet, we would talk about it. And that night I went home and wrote for over 2 hours, and every single day I would write, and I treated it like going to the gym, and I ended up writing a novel, 90,000 word novel in 91 days, and it was awful. It was terrible, but I had sort of caught the bug, and I also was operating under a lot of, naivete, because like you mentioned, I thought, oh, you become a published author and, you can make a bunch of money and, live this, great lifestyle and whatnot. I didn't know, what was at the end of the rainbow. And so that probably helped me. So basically,
let me cut in for a second. So you wrote,
Sure.
You wrote this 90,000 word novel in basically 1,000 words a day for 3 months. And,
yes.
And I think I got to take a look at that, right?
Yeah, it was called Drug Possession.
Yeah. So, the buy side was much better. We can both agree on that. But you had to do that in order to do the buy side. Basically, you had to get that out of your system first. So
yeah, I've actually heard it said this way: is in order to write your first book, you have to write a book.
Yeah.
And that was true for me. You were able to do it on the first shot, which is amazing. But yeah, I had to go through that process in order to be able to write The Buy Side. It was funny because it was like August of 2010, and I typed the end for the first time, and it was worse than a first draft. But in my mind, I was like, all right, I'm ready, to get an agent. I'm ready to publish. Like I was ready.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you finished this this novel, and like you said, it wasn't very good, but how do you go from that to writing a proposal for the buy side? How did you pivot into that memoir nonfiction?
So I was fortunate in the sense that I had a story, and I was fortunate in the sense that it was very timely. So we're coming up on, it's now 2011. I'm still working on drug possession every day, trying to make it better. And the insider trading headlines are hitting the streets every day of the newspapers. And, Main Street does not like Wall Street very much. And I'm sitting on, this story, my life, where I worked for a guy who was literally the poster child for insider trading, Raj Rajaratnam. And so I didn't know what I was doing, but one night I was inspired to write. I wasn't sure what it was, but it was titled The Buy Side, and I saw this parallel between my life and career on Wall Street. If you took that chart and my success and how my entire career went, and you put it on top of an S&P 500 chart, they mirrored each other. Like I took a step back in 2000. Well, I showed up in 94 and, I was trying to get my footing. And then all of a sudden in 99, I went to Galleon, and that's when the .com, boom happened. And in 2001, went to a new firm and took a step back. And then, the market was kind of flat when I went to rehab the first time. And then I got back and the market took off again. And as the entire world was coming to its knees, I was relapsing every day. So I guess you don't even call it relapsing at that point. You call it using. But I literally was falling apart when the entire market was. And so I felt like there was something there. And so one night I sat down and I didn't look up until 6 hours later, and I had written something like 20 pages. And it was just kind of my career, and I sent it to a few friends, and it got passed around. And 2 days later, a literary agent named Lisa Leshny called me unsolicited and said, I heard that you wrote this thing called The Buy Side. I was able to take a quick look at it. Would you consider turning it into a book proposal?
So that basically got randomly forwarded to her.
Yes.
Okay. So you didn't know her ahead of time. It was just...
No, that was a little luck. Definitely.
Yeah,
luck.
I mean, I had, I don't want to... I had similar luck for sure. Just amazingly random luck, and also, like you said, a story that was timely, and just a lot of things had to go right.
Right. Actually, one thing I'd like to jump in, which is, it's kind of funny. Friends and family and people knew that I had written Drug Possession, right? And no one was going out of their way to say, hey, I know this person, or I know that person, or whatever. But all of a sudden, now there's this literary agent who is interested, and we set up a meeting. She loved my book proposal that I wrote in 10 days.
So now, did you write an actual proposal, or was it just a draft, or what was it?
So I'll back up just a second. So she called me and she said, let's meet in 3 weeks. And I said, how about this? I said, why don't I write a book proposal? I didn't know how to write a book proposal, but I said that. I said, how about I write a book proposal, send it to you, and we'll meet in 3 weeks. And she was like, oh, like laughing at me, thinking that's not possible. And so for the next 10 days, the only thing I did was work on this proposal called The Buy Side. My first call was to a friend named Brian, who had written a bunch of books. And I said, hey, Brian, I'm like, what's a book proposal? Like, how do you write one?
So I just want to interject here. So for, the benefit of people listening, if you want to publish a nonfiction book, you have to write a book proposal, which basically is a shorter document, 50, 60, 70 pages, that just tells you what the book is about. If you're writing a fiction book, if you're writing a novel, then you have to write the whole book first and sell the book.
Right.
So for nonfiction, you just have to write a proposal, but which in many ways is harder than writing an actual book. I find writing a proposal to be unbelievably difficult. I hate it.
It is. It's a different kind of writing, and that's, because you got to be a salesman, you got to, do a synopsis of,
I should have you write my proposals for me.
I'm getting good at them, but yeah. But one thing I want to go back to though, so the funny thing is that no one was going out of their way to help me, get an agent for drug possession, and then all of a sudden now I have this literary agent who wanted to sign me on the spot, right? All of a sudden, I'm getting unsolicited calls from friends and Facebook and Twitter saying, "Oh, I know a guy, William Morris," or "I know a guy, a woman over here," and I'm just like, "Where were you before, before I got, someone on the line?"
Yeah,
and so
how
funny.
that works. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Once you get one yes, then all of a sudden,
So now
things become
you
much
have
easier.
a proposal, and now you have an agent. And I assume you did some back and forth and cleaned up the proposal a bit. But now it's time to shop it around. So talk about what that was like.
So there was a little bit of a delay. I ended up writing the entire summer, and one day I took, I guess, some time out to go down to Occupy Wall Street, and I just wanted to kind of check it out and see what was going on. And so I'm standing there at Occupy Wall Street, and I got a text that my former boss had just been sentenced to the largest sentencing in the history of Wall Street for insider trading. And I'm looking at Occupy Wall Street, I'm looking at my phone, and I said, okay, if today is not the day to sell my book, it never is. And so I went home, spoke with Lisa, and I said, we got to try to sell this thing now. And she said, okay, let's take your proposal. Let's put it on steroids. Instead of one sample chapter, we'll have 3. You can have excerpts in your summary chapter outline. Like, let's go for it. And so in November of 2011, we sent to 19 publishers. And immediately we had 2 meetings booked right away. One with Random House, one with St. Martin's. There were, I would say, about 6 firms that were trying to schedule a meeting, 1 or 2 no's and a bunch of no responses. And so, we booked the first 2 meetings and walked into Random House, and it was kind of surreal, like walking into an office like that. And I didn't know what I was getting into. The one thing I had going for me was, I'm writing a memoir, so it's like you can't stump me. It's not like walking into an interview at Morgan Stanley and them asking me about the Japanese yen, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna know the answer. And so I just was very comfortable and just kind of talked the talk and had a lot of fun with it. And we walked out, and Lisa said, "Oh, that was great." And so the next day, we met with St. Martin's. Same thing, went phenomenal. Then we started booking some new publishers, and we got a call from Random House, my editor Rick Horgan, and he wanted to do a preemptive deal because he did not want me to meet any other people.
So let's talk about that. So basically, what the agent does is takes your proposal around and tries to generate as much buzz as possible, so publishers are willing to pay more for it, right? And so
Yes.
Rick can see this happening, and he's like, I gotta close the deal before this gets out of hand, right?
He was trying to get me pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Off the market.
Yeah. So my experience was similar but different. I never did any meetings in person. I did a couple of conference calls, but I never met anybody in person. I think we sent Street Freak out to 23 publishers, and ultimately I had 4 that were interested, and those 4 participated in an auction. So I actually had an auction, which was pretty exciting. But anyway, so continue. So Random House decided to pay what for the book?
So just to complete the loop, so Random House, and since we'd met St. Martin's, we obviously kept them in the loop, and the 2 of them kind of started, negotiating against each other. But Random House was so much bigger. They were going to be the clear winner. So we eventually sold world rights to Random House for $250,000. Typically, very often books, they'll just sell just North American rights. But that was kind of like the final kiss. They didn't want to go up to 250, but if they were going to, they wanted world rights.
So
meant,
let's talk about the difference between territorial rights and world rights. So my book, I sold North American rights, which meant that I retained the right to sell, the right to publish in other countries, which I did. I published in Brazil and Italy, and I got actually extra money for that. But you basically got it all, world rights. How many countries was the buy-side published in?
I think right now, I don't know this to be fact. It's north of 5. I'm going to guess 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I know it's Poland. If the UK counts, that's it. I know it's China, count, Germany. The cover of me in Poland is pretty awesome.
Foreign covers are always pretty great. Street Freak in Italy, they called it Cannibal, which is a pretty awesome title. But you didn't get any extra money for that. That's the sad part. So you just basically got $250,000 and you're done, right? Now, but
I was very happy.
Well, you were super happy. But let's just talk about perspective here, okay? Like in the publishing world, first of all, $250,000 is a really big deal. That is a big deal, and I think advances have gone down since then. So, yeah. 250 is. When you talk about like somebody getting $1 million advance or a $2 million advance, that's like for the Hillary Clintons of this world, for really famous people, for some schmuck like you or me to walk in and get a 6-figure advance that's big. So onto this misconception about, everybody thinks authors are rich and stuff like that. Like $250,000 is, it's a decent amount of money. You can't sneeze at that, but maybe it would be nice if you wrote a book every year, but you can't write a book every year. So that lasts you how long? And then you have to do other stuff. And anyway, it's not the money that people think it is.
No, 100%. And that 250, I think got paid in 5 installments, and
yep.
It wasn't until that was December of 11, and my book didn't publish, despite being finished a year earlier. It didn't publish till June of 2013. So it was a long process.
Yeah.
The real value that I've gotten, and not to get ahead of ourselves, but the real value is doors that I didn't even know existed have opened since writing the book.
All right, let's just hold that thought. We'll talk about that later.
Sure.
I do want to come back to that because you get so many intangible benefits from writing a book other than just the money. The money is actually probably the smallest part of it. But I think another misconception that people have is that you have this, people have probably said to you the buy side has sold millions of copies, right? I'm sure somebody has said that. People have said that to me about Street Freak, and nothing could be further from the truth. Books, there's only like a few dozen books in the history of the world that have sold over 1 million copies. So if you're comfortable, tell us approximately how many copies it sold and put that in perspective.
Sure. I don't know the numbers exactly, and it's kind of funny. The publishing industry, they don't play with the numbers, but it's not like you get a number every month. But a year ago I got a statement and I'd sold, I think it was like 65,000 copies.
Now that's ebook and print, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but now if you said to somebody, 65,000 books is a huge amount of books. People have no idea, the scale of, you know, if you wrote a book and it sold 65,000 copies, you would be orgasmic. You would be extraordinarily happy. That's a big deal, you know.
Well, I mean, yeah, and you think about it, right? If I self-published that and got about $10 a book, like that would be a big payday.
So, we'll get to that in a second too. So let's talk about sort of the math of the advance. Now, when you get an advance, it's an advance on royalties. Okay. So so you sold 65,000 books. So let's say, you sold 100,000 books. And it was a $25 hardcover, so you get 15%. That's your cut. So 15% of $25 is $3.75. So if you sold 100,000 books, you would get $375,000. But you already got paid $250, so they would owe you another $125. That's how it works. Right. Now, that situation is what's called when a book earns out, when they earn out the advance and you get paid additional royalties. But that, I would say, only happens about 5% of the time. For 95% of books, the advance is all you get. And that was true with me with Street Freak. I didn't even come close to earning out on Street Freak. I got a large advance and didn't sell as many books, so that was that. So,
yeah. I mean... That's the goal, right? But you're right. It's very similar to what you said, but I heard something once where, you know, the publishing industry makes 90% of their money on 10% of the books. And
probably the 10% of the books are books they had no idea they thought they were going to be a hit to begin with. You know,
right.
I think the book industry is pretty bad at sort of picking winners and losers. By the way, so my publisher published Levi Johnston's memoir and released it at about the same. So I don't know if you remember, but Levi Johnston was Bristol Palin's boyfriend. Right? Like the guy that knocked up Bristol Palin and then like got on the bad side of Sarah Palin. So they got him to write a book, or, you know, Ghost wrote it for him or whatever. And it had a decent title. The book was called Deer in the Headlights. But, you know, it was, you know, my publisher was not 100% behind my book. And literally the books were coming out, I think, on the exact same date. And they put all their resources into this book in terms of publicity. And it was one of the biggest flops in the history of the book industry. It was insane. So there was also
on that.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say on that same thing. So leading up, I handed my book in May of 2012, and they said, all right, your pub date is June 4th, 2013, and I was like, what? Like I couldn't believe I had to wait a whole year. And a friend of mine actually said to me, because I was having lunch with them at the time, and he said, Turney, he goes, you're only a virgin once. And I was like, all right, I get it. And so I sort of enjoyed that year buildup. But I ended up having lunch with my publisher, which is different than my editor. Basically, the publisher is basically the editor's boss.
Yep.
And we had lunch, and we sat down, and I said, Tina, I know I'm going to be competing with a bunch of other books, and I just, you know, was curious if I should hire my own publisher. She's like, Turney. She's like, this is a lead book for us. And so I said, okay, and I trusted the process. But I'd been given advice that very often people aren't happy with the publisher's publicity team, so they hire their.
You had a very unusual experience, I would say.
Right.
I think most authors feel that their publisher doesn't do anywhere near the amount of work that they should in order to market a book. And that was true in my case. You were fortunate, or good, or both. Random House, I think, was behind the buy side just 100% from the start. It just, I don't know if it was because of, you know, your magnetic personality or or the strength of the book or whatever. The advertising budget for Street Freak was $500.
Oh wow.
and which I almost would have rather it was 0. I mean, that was a little bit of a slap in the face. There was some other stuff going on there. You know, they were publishing Duff McKagan's memoir, the guy from Guns N' Roses, and Duff McKagan had gone to either community college or something in Seattle, some college in Seattle, and gotten a degree in finance. So the publisher made him out to be the financial expert on the imprint. Really just sort of, you know, stuff that really makes you uncomfortable. I sort of watched you go through this process, and I was amazed at the difference. I would say probably 95% of authors have a really tough time. And yes, like, they do their own publicity. They hire publicists. Right. They hustle interviews. They hustle podcasts. They spend literally hours and hours and hours just hustling all kinds of publicity for their book.
Yeah, 100%. And again, sorry if I'm going a little off topic, but like the January of 2013, so I had 6 months, my agent Lisa was like, okay, you have to start blogging, 3 or 4 times a week. And I was like, no, I'm not a blogger. Like, no, I wasn't insulted, but I just didn't want to do it. And I didn't understand back then, the buildup of the 6 months and how I could find new readers and whatnot. But an interesting thing, like, I'm buddy with a guy named James Altucher, right? And he is fantastic he built his audience, and he's got a huge following right now. And it's like, you build the following, then write the book, whereas you and I wrote the book and then tried to get the following.
Yeah, very unusual, and in fact, almost impossible nowadays.
Right.
Almost impossible to do that. Let's just talk about some other things. So we talked about the advance and the 15%. Now, that royalty rate goes down, I think, for paperbacks. I think it's like 8 or 9%. So, and there's also film rights, which we can talk about if you're comfortable talking about that. I sold, I sold film rights for Street Freak very cheaply, and for TV, and nothing ever, like a lot of things in Hollywood, nothing ever came of it, but at least I sold a couple of options. What happened with you?
So on PubDate, I got an offer. I'm repped by CAA, and on PubDate, they got an offer from Sony, and they optioned it for $10,000, which I was told was good, or going rate.
It is good, yeah.
And they put a dream team together. The director was a guy named Michael Dinner, who was at the time doing Justified. A producer who was the head of Sony Feature at the time, Mike DeLuca, and they eventually put a writer on it, Sheldon Turner, he'd won a Golden Globe for Up in the Air, and they sort of sat on it all summer, and it wasn't until the beginning of 2014 when all of a sudden they said, oh my God, we better get our act together, because The Wolf of Wall Street had just released, and then Showtime announced that they were gonna produce the show Billions, and that's when they kind of started to do work. And so I definitely got lost in the shuffle. And a year later, Sony had the option, to do a second year, and at that point they just said no. And then I retained the rights after that 1 year option was up.
So there's Hollywood, there's like a big first to market advantage. Like, once The Wolf of Wall Street came out, then there was going to be no other Wall Street movies for like 10 years. Once Billions came out, there were going to be no other Wall Street TV shows for 10 years. But there's sort of like this big land grab that's like, okay, everybody run to this side of the boat. We're all going to buy up a bunch of options on Wall Street stories, and, whichever one gets made first is the one that goes.
Right. So we'll see. I'm still, I'm a little over 4 years out on the buy side publishing, and there's still interest in conversations, and there's nothing imminent right now, but it's never dead either. So
No,
we'll see.
no, you could. This could literally be made into a movie or something 20 years from now. It's never dead. It's
Right.
never dead. Yeah, I hold out hope. Let me do.
Me too.
Yeah, let me do a quick commercial break. I just want to let you guys know, if you're interested in reading my stuff, a good starting point is the 10th Man newsletter published by Malden Economics, and it's absolutely free. Free isn't free, as in doesn't cost anything. The name of the newsletter actually comes from World War Z, if you saw that. To sign up, all you have to do is go to www.10thman.us. That's www.10thman.us. That's 10th as in number 10. It's a good introduction to how I think about markets, and there's plenty of funny stuff in there too. Just go to www.10thman.us. You saw World War Z, right?
I don't think I did. I'm sorry.
You see all movies. How did you not see that?
I know. I know. I don't think I saw it.
It's pretty good, actually. Yeah.
Wait, who's the lead in that?
Brad Pitt.
Maybe I did. I don't know.
Yeah. You would remember, I think. So let's talk about your other sources of income. So let's get back to like what we were talking about a half an hour ago. So you got the $250,000 advance. You got some money for film rights, but that's pretty much all the money. So now you are, or for the last several years,
Excuse me.
you've attempted to be, I think successfully, a full-time writer. So I have to ask, what are your other sources of income? What have you been doing?
Well, I strip on Thursdays and Sundays. I'm just kidding. I do whatever I need to do. Now, so as we were talking before, like the doors that I didn't even know existed. All of a sudden CNBC came calling, and they gave me my own column. So I started working with them. At one point, there was a new site that came out called Cafe. They wanted me to write for them.
I forgot about that. You told me about that back then. I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
Well, it was a great gig while it lasted. They eventually bought Scary Mommy, and all of a sudden, I didn't really fit the demographic of a writer because I wasn't a Scary Mommy.
Yeah.
But so that made me some money for a while. I've done some ghostwriting. That's actually helped a lot. You can get paid, $50,000-$60,000 to write someone else's book if it's someone who's of significance and can get a big advance. And like this is a door that I did not ever see coming. I got a call one day from I forget the name of the production company, and they're like, hey, we're doing this new show called The Filthy Rich Guide. You just came out with a book called The Buy Side. We think you'd be perfect. Can you record yourself just talking about ridiculous things that some of your billionaire friends have done? And I was like, okay. And then next thing I know, it gets picked up, and for the last 3 seasons, I'm a featured commentator on a primetime TV show for CNBC, and I couldn't have crafted that myself. And
did you get paid for that?
One day,
did you get paid for that?
Yeah, I get paid every day I go to set.
For the Filthy Rich Guide?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, 3 seasons, 10 episodes, and
wow.
Yeah, and all I have to do is sit in front of a green screen and make snarky comments. Like, great job. Another day, I got an unsolicited phone call from the showrunners at Billions. Once my show wasn't getting any traction, they were getting ready to shoot their pilot, and they said, hey, we'd love for you to read this pilot and give us some notes. And I read it twice and took notes, went in, met them, had my stuff typed up and said, page 13, I don't think a hedge fund guy would say this, but he might say this, and went through the whole script. And by the end of the meeting, they said we'd love to hire you as a consultant on the show. And so for the first 2 seasons of Billions, I've been working with those guys, and so I've been piecemealing it out sort of here and there. You know, am I living some extravagant life now? No, not even close. But I haven't needed to go back to a job or 9 to 5 that I'm not passionate about either. So, it's been great.
I have so many follow-up questions.
Okay.
Well, first of all, this gets back to what we were talking about before, which is that the best part about writing a book isn't really the money; it's all the doors that it opens.
Right. Actually, can I interrupt you one second?
Yeah, sure.
One of the biggest revenues that has happened since the book, I totally forgot to mention.
Speaking gigs, right?
Yeah. I got flown to the Cayman Islands for, they called me up and they this is when I first started out, so my rate was only $5,000. But they said, they're like, we'd love for you to come speak, and so we went back and forth and we negotiated. I said, well, my rate's $5,000, and they're like, okay, no problem. And then I said, well, anyway, we can extend the trip another 2 days, and they're like, sure. So I got like a 4-day trip to the Cayman Islands to speak for 30 minutes, and I got paid $5,000. Like, it's a home run.
Yeah.
So I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I guess my main follow-up question is, well, I mean, we've talked about this before. I think your next step is to write another book, in order to keep your brand going. I think. Am I right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So I know you're working on stuff, and I know you probably don't want to give a lot of details on it, but tell us a little bit about how that's going. Is it going well? Is it going not well? How you feel about it?
It's a lot. It's going not as well as I had hoped. I thought, all right, I'm a New York Times bestseller who's got a column at CNBC. I work on a hit TV show. Like, I'm like, I got the resume. Like, where do I sign? And it hasn't worked out that well. I'm still toying with a book proposal that is kind of a follow-up to the buy side, and I think the problem I'm running into is it's not as salacious as my first book, and so it's kind of a letdown. And so I'm trying to figure out what the best way to tell the story that I want to tell, because the way I write, I do believe it should be a narrative, but it kind of has a self-help soul to it, and
Yep.
I just haven't hit the target yet, and so that's been a little bit of a struggle, and I don't know if a publisher will be interested, and so I might end up self-publishing myself, and I've got a bunch of other stories that are kind of running around in my head that I want to put down, but I know you have a completely different system or workday than I do. I think yours is probably much better than mine, and this is an excuse, but I have an 11-year-old daughter, so very often I can't be as regimented as, if she's sleeping at my house, I'm off schedule. But I totally forget what my point was, but I know what I was going to say. Writing isn't the kind of thing for me where I can put in 12-hour days. Like, it's just the quality of writing isn't good. So I have to kind of plan my day and only expect to get a good 3 to 4 hours of writing. The other hours that I'm working, for me, need to be focused kind of on other areas. So it's not like, I've got 4 book ideas, let me just pump them out. I can't do that.
Man, all kinds of thoughts running around my head. So I do want to talk about self-publishing. I'm sure people want to know about that. Yeah, I think I have a lot of stamina writing. I'm kind of an athlete. I write pretty much 6 hours a day every day. plus more.
Right.
I'm working on another book as well, and it's just hard. I think like you, it's turning out to be way harder than I thought. I have the same feelings about it. Like I publish a giant newsletter with huge subscription base. I write for Bloomberg. I write for Forbes. I have 2 books out. Like, how hard can this be? And yet, writing a proposal and selling it is like this never-ending ass ache. And it got to the point where, earlier this summer, I just said, I quit. Like, I'm putting it down for a long time because it's just too emotionally... Everything about the book business just pisses me off. Everything gives me heartache. It gives me stress. It's the only source of stress in my life. Really. Like, I don't have a lot of stress writing the Daily Dirt Nap. I don't have a lot of stress, writing, editorial columns or doing what I do. Books give me stress. The whole business just gives me stress. Do you feel that way, or is it just me?
No, it's 100% that way. And, because as we've mentioned, I've ghost written a couple of books, and so I'll work my ass off for months and then send it over to the person, and sometimes it's like they freak out over, like, I wasn't wearing a pink shirt. It was blue. And like in their mind, the entire chapter is wrong, and it's like we can change the color of your shirt, and so it becomes so stressful because they have to like it, and then your agent has to like it, the publisher has to like it, and meanwhile, I don't know about you, but it's very rare for me to finish something and be like, this is awesome. I mean, I usually work to the point until where I'm like, I hate this, I can't look at it again, get it off my desk.
Yeah.
And that's usually when I have the most success. When I like something, I usually get a note back saying, this is a teardown. So
yeah.
But it's very stressful, but I got to tell you, Jared, I can't imagine doing something else. And I don't know. I know I had a very fortunate first run at it. But when I look back at the buy side, the bulk of that book was written between January of 2012 and May of 2012. And I don't know if it's like giving, childbirth and you don't remember the pain and all that. But when I look back on those 5 months, it's romantic. I know I was like, all I was doing was smoking cigarettes, drinking Diet Coke, writing for, 6 to 7 hours a day, and then watching bad reality TV and eating ice cream. Like, that's all I remember. And that was the funnest part of the whole process.
I wrote all of Street Freak with like a giant dip in my mouth, which I have since quit. I just want to talk about self-publishing, and then we'll finish up. So I actually self-published, technically, my novel, All the Evil of This World. And there's pluses and there's minuses. The pluses, let's talk about the pluses. The pluses, I got to write the book that I wanted to write. I didn't have to deal with any stupid editors. I did it my way. You can actually play the Frank Sinatra song in the background. I did it 100% my way. And I'm proud of that book. And I will give that book to anyone because it's mine. It's just my work. The other plus is the royalties are 72%. So on a $20 physical paperback, which is print on demand, and that's what I sell it for is $20, I get $14. So you don't have to sell a lot of books for it to be meaningful. You sell 1,000 books, that's $14,000. That's pretty good.
Right.
But the downside is that authors like to bitch about, marketing and publicity departments at publishers. having done a traditionally published book and a self-published book, I think that they should probably complain less, because even the work that the publisher does is better than doing it all yourself, which is a huge amount of work and honestly not that effective. I got 100 galleys printed up and mailed them to everybody I knew, and my hit ratio on that was probably about 3%. And it just means a lot. It means something different when, a publicity person and a publisher is sending it out than just like, hey man, check out my book. It doesn't work. Honestly, if you were to ask me if I were to self-publish again, I would probably say no. I don't want to do that again. Even with the money, and even though I have a platform and I can sell books, it's just and the prestige. That's the other thing. I mean, self-publishing just kind of has a stigma to it, especially in the book world. I'm sure that when I go to sell my next book and they look to see my last one was self-published, there's going to be a stigma to that. So.
Well, but the one thing I would say is it's fiction. So if you go back to them with the nonfiction, it's kind of like, all right, it's not totally relatable. I don't think.
That's true. If I'm going back for nonfiction, it is different. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I have a question for you then, because I am considering self-publishing the next one. You did everything yourself, right? And out of pocket, what would you say that cost you?
Aside from time, in terms of money,
yeah.
It probably just cost me about $1,000.
See, because I was thinking there must be places to go where you're willing to write a check for $5,000 or $6,000 and do very little or less. I'm not talking about the publicity or any of that, but I don't know. I thought there must be places where you can pay a little bit more and still self-publish. I don't know if that's an option, but I would probably prefer to do that than to learn 7 new skill sets.
I paid for cover art. I paid for proofing. I actually paid for reviews. I probably spent more than $1,000. I think I spent like $2,000, and then I had to pay for the galleys. So altogether, I think that was about $2,000.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if you know this, but with all my guests, we do a speed round just like we have in the newsletter, and I give you this or that, A or B short answer questions, and they're supposed to be funny. I know you're a big movie guy, so we're going to do some movie stuff. So here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, or Ocean's 13?
12.
Oh, yes! Yes! I am so glad you said that. You're the only person I know who likes Ocean's 12.
I wonder why that is.
I mean, 90% of people will say Ocean's 11. I mean, 12 is like the ending is a little weird for some people. Like they just can't figure it out. But I think that's my favorite one by far, for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, or The Dark Knight Rises?
Oh God, I'm not a Batman person. I'm ashamed to tell you I haven't seen any of them.
None of the Christopher Nolan Batmans? You just
Wait, what about the one with Heath Ledger?
That's The Dark Knight.
That's the only one I saw.
Okay.
So I'll take that.
I guess that one. Okay.
I hate superheroes.
You don't well, I mean, the thing about the Christopher Nolan Batmans is that they're not real. They're different from all the other superhero movies. Most of them are crap. I think you should see the Christopher Nolan ones, especially the last one, The Dark Knight Rises.
All right, I retract my statement only because I am a fan of Deadpool. So.
Oh, I didn't get into Deadpool. Okay, all right. I know you're gonna love this. If you had to enter a competitive eating contest, what food would you eat?
Oh, dude, I can crush anyone in Haagen-Dazs ice cream. Crush them. Email me at TurneyIV. No, yeah. I can crush anyone in ice cream. I don't get ice cream headaches.
You don't get the frozen head?
Nope.
I just have, it's like sushi. Like you can't, throw up from eating too much sushi. Like I can eat like 2 rolls and I'm done. Like same thing with ice cream. I have like, a little bit and then I just don't want anymore. I guess you can just keep going.
But, so this is a fact. No exaggeration. I'm sober almost 8 years. I would say 99.9% of the nights over the last 8 years, I've had at least a pint of Haagen-Dazs ice cream every single night.
Oh, man, you got to check your cholesterol.
I should be 400 pounds.
What is your favorite Ed Norton movie?
Ooh, Primal Fear.
I didn't see Primal Fear. What's that one about?
Yeah.
Is that an early one?
It's pretty early. It's got Richard Gere in it, and Ed Norton gets arrested for killing a priest who supposedly molested him, and he's got split personalities, and it's got a great twist at the end.
All right, I got to see that. I was going to say 25th Hour. That's my favorite.
That's up there.
Yeah.
American History X is excellent too.
Yep. Is Jennifer Lawrence a good actress?
Yes.
You think so?
Definitely.
See,
Yes.
I feel like she's kind of a one-note samba. Like she's the best actress at being angry. She's got angry down, but I don't know.
I hear you, but I don't know. Yes, I think she's talented. She's very talented. She's got some range. She did some of those caper movies. What's the guy's name? I don't know. It was like a 70s bank robber movie. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
American Hustle, is that it?
Yeah. I thought she was great in that. Obviously The Hunger Games.
Yeah.
She was in Joy. She's good.
She's good. All right. If The Buy-Side were a movie, who would you want to direct it?
Oh, I mean, you're going to agree with me. Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah. I mean, and I think he should
sorry.
direct All the Evil of This World too, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my number 2 would be P.T. Anderson.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I ditto for both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. This question I hate, but people ask me all the time. Who would you want to play you?
Obviously it's been asked 100 times. I would say, if my story takes place, it's kind of a 15-year story. So if you're not going for like the older version of me, I think Emil Hirsch would be a great pick.
I can see that. Yeah. One last political question, and you have to pick. You can't not pick one. Karl Rove or Steve Bannon?
Karl Rove. I mean, that's not even a question.
Did you ever hear what Karl Rove's nickname was from W?
No.
W used to call him Turd Blossom. and the reason Karl Rove apparently came from like a really bad background, and Turd Blossom literally means like a flower that grows in poop, So that was his nickname.
That's amazing.
Well, it was great having you on. This is a
Thank you.
Good conversation. I hope everybody learned a lot from it. You have any final words, or is there any place you want people to look you up?
No, I mean, first, just thank you for having me. It was a great time, and it's great because this isn't stuff that I normally talk about on podcasts. I mean, if people want to find me, TurneyDuff.com is probably a good place to start. But no, thank you, and I had a great time.
And if you haven't read The Buy-Side, you should really read it. And it's a very moving book. It's very hard to read, and I say that as a compliment. If you know what I mean.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. All right, this concludes the 9th episode of the Monthly Dirtcast. Thanks to our guest, Turney Duff. Thanks to Blake Jarrell for letting me use his track Punta del Este. And if you want to learn more about the Daily Dirt Nap, go to www.dailydirtnap.com. That's www.dailydirtnap.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at DailyDirtNap. Until next time, so long.